Hey guys, George here. This week we'll be covering some basics of seeding, a little bit of the equipment, and reading your label that comes along with your seed. We are actually at our house working on making sure my seeder is set up and ready to go for the season. Had to replace a couple bearings, put some new belts on there, so just trying to make sure this thing is ready to go and going to be dependable for us this year. Most of the seeders you guys are going to have available to you to rent are not going to be like this. A lot of guys use spreaders. This one just happens to have a hopper on it. It is hydraulically controlled, so that's why I trust this one. A lot of little bluebirds that are run just off the wheels, I don't necessarily control those or trust those settings. So that's why I like this seeder. I also use the seeder a lot because it's self-propelled. I do a lot of food plots and stuff like that, so I can take this over some pretty rough terrain. I'm not dragging this thing with me. So usually you'll see the settings in here. I'll show this just so you guys have some of these for reference. So usually you are doing a fescue in this area. So the setting is number 10. Your seeding rate is 8 pounds. That is a good over seeding rate. If you're doing a new seeding area for bare dirt, you want to probably double that. Not much more than double. If you're going to go heavy on seed, you can get away basically anything from 10 pounds per 1,000 square foot is pretty good. And we're using 1,000 square foot calculation because most yards, especially in the Kansas City area, kind of start at that 6,000 and go up to 20,000. So it's an easier way instead of by the acre, because an acre, acres roughly 45,000 square feet. That's not exact, but that's a good number for people to work off of if you weren't sure about that. Another important thing is to read your label. Look at this. So we are using a tall fescue. This is actually a pasture grass. It does better in an unirrigated system. If you are seeding within city limits and you're wanting that really dark green, nice soft grass, a tall fescue like this is not what you want. You are looking for a tall fescue, turf type fescue with the thin blades. Gets a little bit darker. This is endophyte free, so this is actually more for horse pastures. It doesn't get them sick. But you can see here, you've got your purity, 98.5% of this variety of tall fescue. You can see your other weed seeds in here. There's no weed seed. That is highly important to make sure you have 0% weed seed. The inert matter is going to be like some of the shafts from the seed heads. You can see this is pretty clean seed, but overall there's just a little bit, some parts of the seed head you can see right there at the end of my finger, some of the chat and chaff that just happen to be in here. So when you're doing these, I like to do 50% overlap, and what I mean by that, whenever you look at the front of this machine, in between those tires, you want to overlap half this machine every time you go, especially when I'm putting the seed down. That way everything's chewed up, and then on that second pass that you're doubling up, you're really getting that soil pulverized. You only want the seed to be in that top half inch. If you go any deeper than that, you're going to have a lot of troubles with germination. If you go any shallower than that, you're going to have moisture issues in getting your grass to pop up. So you can see on my setting, I'm actually using a half rate, just a little bit above a half rate on this because I am 50% overlapping when I'm dropping that seed. So I cut that in half so that way we're not just blowing through seed like crazy. But you can see this is what we'll be seeding, kind of the front pasture here at my house. We're using the pasture mix down here, and up top is where I use the turf type. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I know there's a lot of people that get very particular about their seeding. At the end of the day, guys, it's just grass. Grass seed is pretty cheap. If you make a mistake and you start early in the fall, you still have plenty of season to get back and get a little bit more seed on it. Another thing that I plan on doing is doing some aerating. I had a little bit of fungus issue up in our top yard this year. So doing that fungus helps break that up, allow for more penetration of water, a little bit better air, and breaks up those roots to kind of create a stronger turf, if you will. So when we get done, I will be fertilizing with a starter fertilizer. And then the most important thing, kind of in my opinion, is at the end of the season, hit it with a really high nitrogen fertilizer to put it to bed for winter. So the tops of this grass will quit growing, but as long as that soil temperature is above 40 degrees, the roots will still be growing underneath. So we need to feed those, put them into winter, so that way they're fat, dumb, and happy. Next spring they can come out and really start get a good jump on it. In the spring, because you've disturbed your soil, you need to make sure you put down a good pre-emergent. A lot of different ways to do that. A weed and feed is one popular way. Just really anything. Start that in February through March. Some people will do a half app, so you cut your rate in half and do 2 different applications to help control that crabgrass. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I can get you pointed in some good directions for seed quality, because that is, again, when you know, make sure you're using quality materials when you're doing this stuff. This is it for this week's video. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out and we'll get them answered.